So we have been on this wonderful journey with Tawanda Sitole, as I mentioned before, the IOC Safe Guarding Officer right here in Zimbabwe, working as well at the Zimbabwe Olympic Committee to make sure that we are getting to grapple with and understand what is the safeguarding of sport, what is a safe sport. And guess what? Today is the best episode to watch because that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we talk about what is a safe sport, let's talk about one last aspect about the safeguarding, and that is inclusivity. Now, inclusivity by just basic definition, basically means to include everyone, right? But I'm sure Tawanda has got a much better definition of what inclusivity means and how it can actually be applied.
That's all right. Thank you very much, Rimbo. The idea of inclusivity came about when the sporting industry realized that not all individuals are the same, right? For various reasons. We've got people with disabilities, we've got people with albinisms, we've got people with, we've got issues to do with religion that comes in. We've got even the idea of racism that is taking place. I'm sure you've seen various campaigns that have been going, Black Lives Matter, where you're seeing people or athletes taking to the knee and everything, trying to promote this oneness. Sport is one instrument that if people do give it time, they'll realize that it's a unifier. So by virtue or by the virtue of it being a unifier, we want to include and have everyone included in, be it volunteerism, be it competition, right? But then we get to a point where we cannot then get a man and a woman competing on almost every sport. But we are slowly getting there. I'm sure one of the things that is quite exciting right now, you're seeing the athletics. We now have mixed relays. You know, have got all these. But is it really getting to a point where we are addressing this whole aspect of inclusivity in its entirety? Right? We're only going to look at it. Okay, fine. You have the Olympics now. You've got the Winter Olympics, right, which are recognizing the culture, the climate change. We've got the Paralympics that take place different times with the mainstream Olympics. All these are coming in as vehicles where people are saying everyone has a right to sport. I'm going back to the first episode where we spoke about the human right of a person. So regardless of my inefficiencies, or regardless of my inabilities, or regardless of my position that I have, am I able to still compete or play sports in the level or the standard that allows me or gives me gratification and satisfaction? Right? And it be coined as a competition that can actually be accepted. Right? So that's where you then see that people with disabilities, they have got their competitions, but you are also seeing an integrated approach that's coming in where, because we've been questioning, why is it we then have, I always ask this question, why is it we always then have Paralympics being more or less, or the administration of Paralympic games or Paralympic competitions being left out to those who are, to people with disabilities only? Why are we not having able-bodied championing the cause? So we're having that, and we're getting into this need and promoting local bodies to start participating and involving themselves in shaping sport. That's why the sitting volleyball that we mentioned in the first episode is coming in as a new competition that takes into consideration everyone, regardless of what state condition they are in, can still enjoy playing that sport.
Oh yes, and I actually got to learn how to do that as well. Introductory level, so who knows, I might just be a coach one of these days. But let's move on to why we have actually been talking about all of this, the crux of the matter, which is safe sport. After we've safeguarded it, it means now it's basically safe.
Yes.
But are we sure it's safe? So what do we mean when we say this is now safe sport?
That's good. So what we have been doing in the previous episodes was to set the stage for this segment, like what you said, which is now speaking on the creation of a sporting environment that is respectful, equitable, and free from all forms of non-accidental violence. Remember the term that also the definition then, with special emphasis on abuse, harassment, harm, neglect. But all these things, we are trying to get to a point where we can enable one to participate or compete to the best of their ability.
And that is definitely all encompassing when you say that. And so, would I also be correct in saying, say, sport is when we say all of the necessary tools for somebody to effectively play that sport are in place? For example, you brought in boxing, that there are gloves. We're not going for a fist fight, but there are gloves that are there. There's all the protection gear. If someone is playing cricket, all of the protection gear, from the helmets to the rib pads, thigh pads, obviously the pads that they wear and things like that. Is that also inclusive of the equipment and things like that?
Yes, it touches on that, but only to a small section. Because for those that have done sports science or sports administrative courses, you may have come across the term sports safety, right? That's different now from what Safe Sport is bringing. Remember when we started this episode, we were reflecting on a sports person as a human being. They are affected by the daily routines that are happening within the environment that they are. So let me tell the viewers and say, sport starts at home. Sport is then played in the field of play. Sport carries on after the game is done. So the idea of creating a safe environment was not just informed by these other hardwares that we're talking about, but the software of a human being is what we are now addressing, because it can be the two of us here. My aggression towards you, what is informing that, may have nothing to do with the ring in which I'm playing, or may be a cause of certain words that are coming from those that are actually supporting me, encouraging me to kill the person without, and yet they're forgetting that I'm playing sport according to the rules of the game. And when I deviate from the rules of the game, is it their fault or it has to do with me as a person? Have I created a safe environment, or as an athlete or as a competition, I'm actually a danger, not just to this opponent, but to myself as well? So when we are talking of safe sport, we are now talking on how do we carry out the prevention of the ability in one to cause harm. You can be there as a supporter. How many of you are actually, sorry to say or to give this example, but how many of you are ready to go with their mother-in-laws to watch a Dynamos versus versus Highlanders or Cape United? What is the reason? Even if the stadium is safe, even if the stadium has got nice seats, the reason could be the insult that is coming from the supporters. The reason could be the action in which you know that our coach is crazy. How is he going to then address a defeat? How many sporting events have we seen being called off, not because of weather, not because of the poor playing grounds, not because of poor officiating, but just simple hate? You see. So now, some of you may be wondering, what is Tawanda talking about? We're now going back to those forms of safeguarding, where we're talking about the physical, the sexual, the neglect, and the deprivation, and the psychological. Are you in the right frame of mind to compete? Are you in the right health state of health? Mental illness. I'm sure most of you then realized after COVID that actually when you are in when you are alone, when you are, what do they call it when they used to put us in a secluded place?
Isolation.
When you're in isolation, are you really at your best, or something then happens to you mentally that disturbs your fabric as an athlete? How are we going to get, so some of the tackles that you see coming in, flying in that field of play, they are not informed by a skill that has been trained on the field of play. It's an approach that one wants to let out whatever they are expressing or they're going through at that particular time. When you sit down with them and say, but when you did this, what was going on in your mind? You'll be surprised to hear how you can trace back the cause of that action back home.
100%. And I think, Tawanda, this definitely informs us that we have to get more informed about safeguarding in sport, and ultimately reach the place where we've got safe sport locally. Now, Tawanda, I know we could speak about this for hours and on days, as this is your field of expertise, but I want to thank you for giving us an opportunity as well to have an understanding about what safe sport is, what safeguarding sport is, and its application even right here in Zimbabwe. We're obviously wishing you the very best of luck in the implementation, the formulation, and the education of the policy around it to the various sporting associations and individuals that will be interested in making sure that they engage in sport. But thank you so much, Tawanda, for your time.
Thank you very much, Rimbo. I think in part, I would like to just encourage the listeners and the viewers that we all have this duty of creating a safe environment. We are hearing lots of cases where rape is happening, where people end up committing suicide and not being proud of themselves, and yet they had medals and medals, where we have parents who are now trying to create Mbappe in their sons, putting unnecessary pressure or trying to make them make a child improve on what they did at the time that they were playing sport when they were still at school, years later, or settling scores of racism in different forms. So I just want to leave the rest of Zimbabwe and those that are actually watching outside that we've got a very huge task ahead of us of bringing ourselves under one roof and try and operate and put together our minds and come up with not just policies but guidelines that and a lifestyle and a culture of desiring to compete according to the gifts that God has planted and given us.
Well, we definitely hope that will be the case. But thank you so much, Tawanda. I truly appreciate your time and ultimately all of your insights. And we look forward, as I said, to seeing safeguarding of sport here in Zimbabwe. Well, that brings us to the end of our escapade, as I would love to say, on dealing with the issues around safeguarding of sport here in Zimbabwe. I was talking to Tawanda Sithole. He is the IOC safeguarding officer right here in Zimbabwe, working with the Zimbabwe Olympic Committee. And of course, you heard they are in partnership with the Norwegian Federation in terms of implementing and growing many of these programs right here in Zimbabwe. My name is Ruwimbo Chakureka, and very much so, until next time, make sure you tune in for more sports news.
Thank you.